Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here,
And BlueDragonFive.
and welcome to the Main Street Cinema, the show where we discuss the finer points of filmmaking. Yeah, I already messed it up. Dragon, back in 1989, a pivotal piece of Batman media was released upon the public, but it might not be what you think.
Nope.
1989 was a big year for Batman, Dragon. It really was.
It was.
So not only, folks, do we get Batman 89, but we also got Gotham by Gaslight. Now, this, of course, is sort of there's been kind of like alternate timeline stories before this, but suffice to say, this is the first official Elseworlds story. And took almost 30 years, but it was adapted eventually into an animated DC movie. And Dragon, we're here to talk about it. And this is something that you've been really hyped on, so I'm going to kind of let you take the floor on sort of your reactions and everything, and then I'll sort of jump in. So go ahead.
Sure. So yes, folks, Gotham by Gaslight. It's got a very, it's a very important story in the tomes of DC. Because I mean, I don't want to like split hairs too much because everyone knows this to be true. It is the first Elseworld story, but here's the thing: Gotham by Gaslight. It was just it was the first idea of what to do with an Elseworld story, but it didn't get the Elseworld imprint. This created Elseworld, so it is the first Elseworld story. But they didn't think they didn't put a lot of stock in the idea until Gotham by Gaslight did such tremendous numbers. Like, okay, yeah, we can have a whole line of books called Elseworlds, because that's just what they called it. You know, they called it, okay, it's an Elseworld story, and then we'll do a whole imprint of stories just like Gotham by Gaslight. Anyway, so the point is, it's a very historic story. I really, it's on the radar for a lot of people, including myself, from a very aesthetic level, because Mike Mignola, who of course is the Hellboy creator, writer and artist on Hellboy, he artist extraordinaire, who I've actually had the pleasure of meeting back in the day. He did this book, and the art is very striking in putting Batman in a Victorian setting, making Batman into a Sherlock Holmes of sorts. So it's always been kind of a known story, and I don't know how long this has been talked up, but I mean, DC original animated films, of course, I will always attest that their best work is when they adapt works over when they try to do like an in-continuity thing. And this is a story I want to say they've been like kind of talking about. Basically, when people are asking, "What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next?" And a lot of the time, the guys, the producers on these films will say, "Well, here's what we'd like to do," without saying what's directly slated. Now they can just say, "Oh yeah, here's what we got slated. We got 3 movies slated for this year, then the next year." It's crazy. So I was very hopeful when this was finally announced. My way of experiencing when these are announced is very simple. I get the DVD, I get the Blu-ray compact, however it's released now, and they always have like an 8-minute tease, like a sneak peek, where they give you like snippets of footage and they explain like, oh yes, we finally got the idea. Here are some of the voice actors involved. Here's what it was like to develop the story. It's like a little informative, like 8-minute little like sneak peek, and it's always a great little reveal of like what they're doing next, and always kind of leaves me excited for the next one. Almost, in unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it leaves me more excited than I am with the movies presented when it comes to the in-continuity movies. It's like, oh, I gotta sit through this terrible Batman Robin thing, Batman versus Robin. But hey, on the horizon, you got Gotham by Gaslight, or whatever it was, down the line, or like, hey, it's Assault on Arkham. Like, all right.
Oh.
So I was very hopeful for this. It's a big story again, kind of a very detective Batman as promised. You against Sherlock Batman. Has had a really good cast, with Bruce Greenwood returning to the role of Batman, which is the 3rd time he's ever done it, and is very welcome to the role. And Jennifer Carpenter, who, of course, being a Dexter fan, as many people are. Jennifer Carpenter is Selena Kyle. It's good casting. So finally, again, I hate the digital release first. I hate how they release these digitally before they release them physically, because I always have to. I'm a stickler for the physical release, and it finally came out in the physical release. I watched it, and boy, was I satisfied. I was satisfied and impressed by it, but however, my expectations, and this is not a biting way of saying this, they were not surpassed. I was satisfied and impressed, and I was happy with it. But I wasn't necessarily surpassed with all. It lived up to what I thought it was going to be. I was kind of hoping it would be even more amazing, but it was good.
Okay.
However, of course, in this film we do some really there were some really surprising things, and there was a big plot twist that did kind of ache into some of the mystery elements I've loved in other Batman works, like Mask of the Phantasm, Return of the Joker, and of course, a recent example, Batman and Scooby-Doo and Batman Brave and the Bold. You know, like, it's a really good mystery story, and we had some shocking reveals. Again, it's like it plays like one of those mysteries where you're so caught up in it. It's like, man, there's so many red herrings here. Like, it could be this person, it could be that person, and you're kind of realizing, almost like a Silence of the Lambs type thing. Like, oh my god, it's this person. It's gotta be. And then like the last minute, just when you're starting to doubt yourself, it happens. Like, oh god, but it makes so much sense. So yeah, I mean, it had me so many points in this movie, and again, I didn't really have any bad moments within this movie, so I was very, very happy with it. What about you, Tiki?
All right, so yeah, I had much less investment in this, honestly, Dragon. To tell you the truth, I'm more interested in going back and in reading it. Like, it definitely has an interesting historical context, also with the '89 of it all. But you were definitely kind of like, you know, sort of a mini version of the Deadpool thing. I was sort of like experiencing this through your hype. Having said that, Dragon, I got to admit, when I sat down and watched this, I liked it quite a bit. I'm far from loving it. I'm far from loving it. This, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's certainly far better than, you know, it definitely makes Batman Harley Quinn look like what I'm assuming, based on what you've told me about Phantasm. It makes Batman, this Batman Harley Quinn makes this look like Phantasm.
Yeah.
But I'm not over the moon about this, Dragon. I gotta say, kind of a controversial thing I'm gonna say right here that I'm sure you're probably gonna rake me over the coals for. Look, Bruce Greenwood, I've seen him before as Batman. I didn't think his heart was in it this time.
Oh wow, that's shocking.
There's quite a few moments, both as Bruce Wayne and as Batman, where I didn't really. And like I said, Dragon, I'm not just saying this as someone who's just kind of unfamiliar with his Batman, you know, because
he's Under the Red Hood. That was it was his introduction.
I don't know. There's just certain moments where it feels like there should be a lot more pathos behind the performance than there really is. Again, I'm trying to kind of dance around sort of spoilers here. It's worth noting, folks, that this isn't a spoiler cast per se, so there's not going to be spoilers all the way through for this. But proceed with caution, because as we go through, we're going to kind of be slowly unraveling things. So, Dragon, we'll talk more about the Bruce Greenwood of it all. I'm not saying he did a lousy job or anything. I want to make that clear. I'm far from it. I'm just saying, you know, it's definitely not among the most memorable Batman voices that we've had, you know. And I know it's unfair to compare it to Conroy, but
well, he's no Jason O'Mara. Let's just say that much, okay? Jason O'Mara, love the actor in Agents of Shield, but he is no Batman. I'm sorry, he's not a Batman. Bruce Greenwood, in comparison to Jason O'Mara, there's a Batman.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I will say, Dragon, I really wish the animation in this movie was just flat out better. I think that's kind of a big thing that I sort of took away from it. There's definitely moments that are good, but just stylistically, like, it feels more like something that would come out of like the Justice League animated series or something like that. It doesn't really have the scope and scale of a movie per se. It's more of just like a really imaginative episode, like a 3-part episode or something. So yeah, I'm not over the moon about this one, Dragon. I hate to say it. There is good stuff in it. There's definitely good stuff in it. It's a very enjoyable ride. I watched it 3 times through, so you know that goes to show. It's not like I'm sitting there, you know, like, oh God, when is this going to end? You know, no, definitely not.
Let me ask you this, because here's where I'm kind of. I think the analogy I would kind of meet you in the middle with is that I feel like it's a movie where you're on the moon but not over the moon. Would you agree with me that far? Would you go that far with it?
Maybe I'm like gazing proudly at the moon. I wouldn't say I'm on the moon.
All right.
I'm gazing at the moon. The moon looks really nice, but I'm not quite there yet.
All right.
So I think I'm kind of like just a tiny bit level below you in terms of my enjoyment of it. But I still enjoyed it quite a bit. So, alrighty. So, Dragon, let's get into some background on this.
All right, there's the background, mainly on the book here. So, of course, it's 1989. DC releases its first Elseworld story, again, officially or not, and again, it went over so well, it spawned the line and made others. Honestly, it made other stories retroactively Elseworld stories, most notably Dark Knight Returns, because Dark Knight Returns is like in an alternate timeline. But again, technically, that is an Elseworld, so it kind of got lumped in with what quantifies as an Elseworld story. Because you got to remember, Dark Knight Returns came out in '86, where again this came out in '89. So again, it shows you the power of this story to kind of turn probably the most historic Batman story ever made into an Elseworld story.
Right, right.
Again, this is like the birth of what an Elseworlds is. Basically, it was what if, and I don't know if I forget when Marvel started to coin what if. I don't know if this is DC's answer to what if, or if it was just Marvel eventually kind of they were kind of pulling a similar thing, but we want to tell these what if stories. And what if stories, by the way, folks, are always really fun. I think we'll speak more to that a little later on, but I think what if stories there's a lot of just kind of likability in that kind of that simple idea. But we'll more on that later. So the comic was by Brian Augustine. Sorry, Brian Augustine. He has a funny spelling on his name. Sorry about that. Brian Augustine and Mike Mignola, as previously mentioned, creator of Hellboy. Basically, it's a 19th century Batman, vaguely steampunk, and it's essentially the story is Batman versus Jack the Ripper. The way the story went down was Mike Mignola. DC, they kind of pitched Mignola the idea they wanted him to work on, and Mignola was kind of between jobs. He was about to go back to do a Wolverine arc with Marvel. But he got so wrapped up in the pitch because they were telling, okay, it's like a Victorian Batman. It's just, yeah, and basically Mignola keeps coming up with these pitches of like, what if we did that? And what if you guys did that, the costume? What if you did that with the setting? What if you used the negative space? And basically he got sold into it essentially, whereas he got so wrapped up in the idea, okay, you sold me, darn it. And Gotham by Gaslight, just for the record, it is 2 stories. You have Gotham by Gaslight, that's the first story. It's the gist of what the main plot is. And for our third act setting in this movie, we mainly borrow from the other story. It's like if you ever bought the graphic novel for Gotham by Gaslight's 2 stories. It's Gotham by Gaslight, and it's Batman, Master of the Future. Which, again, is about all the World's Fair stuff is Master of the Future, essentially.
Oh, okay.
And yes, and again, basically they finally, as per mentioned, we finally adapt the book after again basically going through all the other historic Batman adaptations. Year 1, Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, and we're finally, hey, let's get the Gotham by Gaslight. We're gonna make a few alterations, kind of blend both stories together again. Let's just take the World's Fair setting and kind of take the main story as kind of our anchor for this. And the director was Sam Liu. Sam Liu, honestly, as I'm kind of looking, as I looked through his repertoire, I haven't really done before because I see Sam Liu all the time through the DC original animated films as the director. And again, he's done some Marvel stuff too. He's done he did Plan Hulk that we talked about. He's essentially Sam Liu is the go-to guy for adaptations. That's really what his niche is. He does mainly Batman adaptations. That's Sam Liu's strong point there as director. Mm-hmm. The writer was Jim Krieg. Jim Krieg, I think he's a fairly new writer. I want to say he also did Batman Harley Quinn. So Jim Krieg, he's a little iffy, but I want to say this though, his heart's in the right place, and he seems like a really nice guy. So Jim Krieg, I'd like to think he has good ideas, and I like to think just the whole lack of Paul Dini made Batman Harley Quinn turn into Batman Harley Quinn. So. I want to give Krieg points there. Krieg seemed really into doing the Victorian setting because it comes from he's got some Victorian roots in his family, so I think he was more passionate about this story. Let's say anyway. That's the backstory.
Okay, so on to differences from the book, Dragon, because oddly enough, Gotham by Gaslight the movie is sort of an Elseworlds of Gotham by Gaslight the book.
Well, real quick, what about the plot?
Oh, plot. My bad. Yeah, by all means, Dragon. I'm sorry.
All right. So it's 19th century Gotham on the eve of the World's Fair, and Jack the Ripper is killing women and terrorizing the city. It's up to Batman and Selina Kyle to protect the women of Gotham from the famed killer and solve the age-old mystery. Who is Jack the Ripper. We follow Bruce Wayne on a Holmesian adventure filled with deductions, steampunk spectacle, and a Zeppelin battle unlike any other. And that's the movie.
Okie dokie.
Differences
I
from the book.
already kind of lost my point, Dragon.
Sorry about that.
No, it's my fault. Do you remember what point I was trying to make?
Yes, the point you were making is there are differences from the film and from the book. Speaking of the book.
Right. Yeah, basically the fact that the book is kind of like the movie is sort of an Elseworlds of an Elseworlds in a way.
In a way, yes. And just, I love it. This rarely, I'm so glad they brought this back. I don't know if they're going to try to do this in the future. I think they realized it's such an important story they had to do that. The DVD, and the reason we're not doing this as commentary, is that they finally had commentary on it. They hadn't been doing commentary for the longest time, which has always kind of peeved me, especially on like Killing Joke. But I get a sense of why they do commentary on Killing Joke in retrospect.
Oh boy!
Which, by the way, I just want to say this. And Bruce Timm, this makes me love Bruce Timm even more. I gotta say that Bruce Timm, I felt sympathy for him because on the commentary, he has spoken to the Killing Joke backlash, and he realizes, yeah, I made a mistake. He's very honest about it, He's like, yeah, I made a mistake on that one. I just, I hear, I get it. I just, it took a swing and a miss.
It was on an off day at work, right?
That's what I'm saying. It's like you get a sense, and I saw like a clip of this on.
Unfortunately, his off day at work was, kind of like
one of the single most important,
one of the greatest comics of all time, but.
And again, it was an innocent idea you and I were rooting for, but again, it went so south. And again, I feel so bad for him because I seen like a clip of like him being asked the question of like, why did you do it? And he's just basically saying, well, I just had again, he's the sell point of the idea, and well, it didn't go well. People didn't like it, so swing and a miss. Mm-hmm. Poor Bruce Timm. The point is, it's a really informative commentary about these guys and the writing. It gives you a really good inkling into the adaptation and the writing process. I think I want to give kudos to those guys. And they addressed, there are some anachronisms, but they did it for dramatic context, and their excuse is like, hey, it's an Elseworlds of an Elseworld. So I thought it was very apt what you just said right there. It's like, hey, it's, it's kind of like, well, it's an Elseworld. So in this version of the DC universe, maybe the timetable of certain events were altered.
So really, the big thing that I know about, the major difference, Dragon, correct me if I'm wrong, the original Gotham by Gaslight is almost kind of like a weird retelling of Year One in a way.
Yes, and that is still in the movie to an extent. But yes, you're right. It is very much.
But they don't spell out the timeline as much in the movie.
You're right about that. Technically, we have like inklings to this being like he's come back. But you're right. It's much more spelled out in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Which I do love that idea, by the way. I'd love kind of doing like a Year One Victorian era, and I think that concept for a story is kind of good. But honestly, either story, while they do address, they outline it more. I feel they could have still spent more time, and they don't really say anything about this is Batman's first time. Is like his early years. Like I think this film shows is like a. Batman's early on. They don't say it's like his first year on the job, but it's like, hey, he's early. Basically, he's seeing what he could become. That's kind of what the story's about in a way, like seeing what a driven Batman could become. He's more Bruce Wayne in this story than he is Batman. I think that's on purpose.
I can see that. Actually, Dragon, there's kind of we'll get to it more. We'll get to Batman himself, but of course, they change up the reveal. There's a different killer at the heart of the book and the movie.
Sure, obviously. So here, it's kind of funny. They put him in like a wordless cameo, so at least they addressed it vaguely. It's kind of funny. So in the comic, spoiler for the comic, Jack the Ripper is Jacob Packer. Jacob Packer is Bruce Wayne's uncle. And they made him Jack the Ripper, and not only Jack the Ripper, and it's so funny. This came out in 1989. Tiki, I'm sure you know about this.
Oh yeah.
Is that here's the reveal is like the one thing. There's one omission from the book that I really love how Gotham by Gaslight opens, and I really wish they could have got that in the movie. It doesn't kill the movie for me by any stretch. I'm saying it was like a really because we've seen it 100 times with Batman stories. So I love this sort of scene, but. It was cool seeing in the Victorian setting. We saw the origin of Batman. We saw Batman's origin unfold in the Victorian time. It was like a fun little kind of reinterpretation of it, where by horse-drawn carriage. His folks were stopped, and they got out. They were Jack the Ripper. Well, again, just a masked killer got out, gunned them down, and the shock waves of the gun had bats flying out, and that's where he got the inspiration because they were out in the wilderness. And the bats flying out terrified the gunman, so he ran off. So he didn't kill Bruce Wayne. So I really liked that opening. And of course, it looked beautiful in the Mignola kind of rendering of it. So for that was a good opening. But what they reveal, very much like '89, is that the killer of the Waynes was also Jacob Packer, and he was Jack the Ripper and essentially Joe Chill were the same man.
Yeah, and without giving it away, Dragon, I must say I like the movie reveal a lot better. I think the movie reveal hits closer to home with Batman fans, and I'm not sure how much logical sense it makes compared to the book, but
it makes more logical sense in the book.
Dragon, like the reveal in the movie is sort of like it's a gut wrenching, like, yeah, that's how this character probably would react in this time period.
I think there's a lot more logic in the movie than with who Jack the Ripper is. And I think it was a smart choice. Like, okay, so anyone who's read the book. So again, I would have been safe if I had read the book, because I didn't read the book beforehand because I didn't want to risk being spoiled.
I
had my own theories going into this of who Jack the Ripper would be, because again, just based on the characters I knew were in the movie and characters I speculated were in the movie. So again, I didn't want to risk it. So I watched this and I read the comic for the first time. And that's kind of what I do with a lot of it. Sometimes it's vice versa, like in case like Dark Knight Returns, obviously read the book first, then the point is, again, it felt just like an '89 move. Again, it's not bad, and I do like the ending of Gotham by Gaslight because it kind of ends with him stopping Jack the Ripper. It's just very much how the book ends. But yeah, it just felt really convenient that, oh man, he just not only did he catch Jack the Ripper, but it was the same guy who killed his parents. And again, all of this happening within year one of like, okay, and this all just happened that Jack the Ripper emerges like a year earlier from when he puts on the Batsuit for the first time. It's all very convenient in the book, so I thought it was a smart alteration there. There's not a lot of differences, by the way. Just like I mentioned, like they blended.
We're not kind of blanking on any other differences, so why don't you go ahead?
It's very brief. It's just let's see, mainly the parents' murder thing, all that stuff we kind of tackled. There was this great scene that I really. They said if they could come back to do a sequel, they'd do this. But Mike Mignola has a great cameo in the book. It's we have a Joker cameo in Gotham by Gaslight, the book, and it's great. There's Joker setup. There's setup for the Joker in that book, where it's basically we're at the police station and they have like Gordon is talking to Bruce Wayne, and he says, and by the way, Gordon looks like Teddy Roosevelt in the book, which is hilarious. I love that choice, by the way, because I love Teddy Roosevelt from Night at the Museum. So, but basically, the setup for Joker is great in that he was a man who poisoned women. And when he was caught, like when the police were coming after him, when he was found out, he tried to poison himself, but he didn't use the right dosage. And in his last moments, he smiled, and the smile, he has a paralyzed smile on his face, and he lived through the suicide attempt.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an old school, like sort of like a reimagining of the man who laughs in that way.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. The point is, it was like all you saw of him was like a wanted poster of him smiling with like the Victorian long hair and stuff, and it was all white. It's the printing press back then. So the point is, they're set up for Joker. I really wish they could have got that in there. However, they did say, and they always kind of say this, so I take it with a grain of salt, but it's like they'd love to do another Gotham by Gaslight, do a sequel, and if they did a sequel, they have an idea. They said they have an idea for a Joker sequel. So it's a question if they'll ever be able to do it. So
okay,
I think that's why they probably didn't go too heavy on Joker. And honestly, Joker was one of my big theories going into this movie, who Jack the Ripper was, and he's nowhere to be seen in the movie. So.
Right. That
was my instant, like, do I see, okay, Jack the Ripper, obviously Jack, Joker, Jack, Napier, Joker. Selina Kyle. They didn't have all the awesome Batman cameos we have in this. They really play with the reimagining. So in the book, the only real Batman
love interest. There's no Bullock in the book, considering the timeline.
Yeah. We have Julie Madison. So there's Julie Madison, who was she was the love interest instead of Selina Kyle, and she was in the second book, barely in the first one at all, if at all. And one last thing, real quick, is that in the book, it's like Jack the Ripper has been established. Like he's been in London. It's the classic Jack the Ripper. We open the book on the letter, like the famous Jack the Ripper. Like we pull it from real life. You know, it's like we pull a lot of real life figures in the movie. We reference a couple, and I'm sorry, we reference a couple in the movie. In the book, they pull a lot more from real life. So it's like Sigmund Freud's in the book. Bruce Wayne learned from Sigmund Freud himself in the opening, and we have the letter that Jack the Ripper wrote, and it's the idea is Jack the Ripper. He's going from London to Gotham, so that's where all the reputation comes from. And this, it's basically saying, what if Jack the Ripper was in Gotham purely? Like, there's no London Jack the Ripper. It's Jack the Ripper starting out in Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Okay. Alrighty then. So let's go through the characters. Of course, we have 4 main ones. So let's start with the big bat himself.
Yes.
All right, so I gotta say, Dragon, I've kind of reached a saturation point of stories that involve Bruce Wayne getting framed.
Yeah?
Because I played through Batman Telltale Season 1. Again, all about Bruce Wayne getting framed. Of course, there's Batman and Scooby-Doo, which, well, you know, definitely the more lighthearted of the two. Is
well, he wasn't framed. They were framed.
He wasn't framed, but there was still a frame-up job in it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just kind of like, and granted, of course, the Telltale Batman game, that's kind of just a matter of timing on my part. That's not necessarily the media oversaturation, but you know, I don't know. It's kind of had to actually, Dragon, the plot with Batman is sort of vaguely kind of similar to Telltale in some ways.
In some ways, yes, and I think the main way to highlight with this take on Batman, which is really really good. And I guess I mean, again, I don't want to draw too many comparisons to the book at this point, but let's just say, you know, you have I presume it's the same way in the book, because we do spend time with Bruce Wayne in the book, but I love how the movie handles this here, where I love that I love how he's more Bruce Wayne than Batman. I thought it was a smart choice for this.
Yeah, there's what, like maybe 2 or 3 big fight scenes with Batman, and that's really about it.
Like Batman in total probably has, well, you know, like also like the introduction, like, hey, Batman saves, you know, he saves the couple in the beginning from our street toughs. And I mean, again, Batman's used very sparingly, and importantly, again, with the design, this is the famous thing from the book that they put in the anime movie, and I love that they got it in here. I'm not the first to say this, but I love that. You'll notice, it's very telling, the Batman mask, the Victorian Batman costume is cool. And not only that, it has the big windows for the eyes. Essentially, there's no glass, there's no like lenses, there's no like, you know, the white Batman eyes, the bat eye slits. It's just, you know, it's like you can see Bruce Wayne's eyes through the mask. It adds like a humanity there.
Yeah, right.
So again, you're very much seeing, you know, Bruce Wayne just kind of putting on the role
really,
of.
Just in general, what impresses me about this story is, I mean, it feels so modern day, with the exception of the technology, right?
Yeah.
Like Batman's not at, you know, he's not at the computer, he's reading a letter. Dragon, one of my favorite little bits is when Batman's reading Jack's letter and Alfred comes in and he's just like, a little bit of light reading, sir.
Yeah, this is gonna sound really silly. I'm just saying, after the Lego Batman, I finally feel like I can say it. It's very Sherlock Holmesian, and now we're putting Batman literally in the position of Sherlock Holmes, so it makes more sense than it ever had before. But we have the Bruce Wayne design, like Bruce Wayne at home after a long night of crime fighting, where he's wearing the red robe. You know, he's kind of shirtless, wearing the red robe at home while he's just kind of was doing his detective work. And you know, we've had Scott Snyder did that. You know, we have it here again. It's an old Sherlock Holmes pull, and I think it worked. And of course, I love with the Lego Batman, we just have it kind of punched up even better when it has like the cowl on, but he has like the Bruce Wayne at home look going on with lobster loving Batman.
Yeah.
I was saying, I always love that lobster loving Batman look. It's great to see, and here with that dramatic scene going on, it just works even better.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying about kind of like there's so much in this story that feels like it could be at a modern day, and I feel like the whole point of that, it kind of goes to show that Batman and even the Batman and Alfred dynamic and stuff like that, and maybe even to a certain extent the Batman and Harvey Dent dynamic, it's sort of timeless.
Yeah. What I really like, again, just fitting into kind of while it's not like, you know, directly stated, I like that you can still feel it. You know, this is Batman early in his career, whether it's year 1 or like year 2. It's like he's early in his career. And I like that you can read that, especially again. here's the thing. I think this is why I like Greenwood more in this role than you, is that I really like that Bruce Greenwood, where he was a really good Batman. I've heard him as Batman. I haven't really heard him as Bruce Wayne, because he, in Under the Red Hood, he's Batman in and out of the costume, And here this is the first time I've ever really heard Bruce Greenwood play Bruce Wayne. I like he adds like a light softness to it in places. Like there's this great bit with Leslie. I love the performance he gives in this moment where I've never heard like a vulnerability on Bruce Wayne like this coming from someone who you also know as Batman, where where Leslie breaks to him the bad news about Pamela, and he says, "Pamela, but you wrote me." It's the way he says, "But you wrote," but like you in your letters, you wrote me. She was, she was on the mend. She was, she was doing all right. I love the vulnerability in that. That's why I'm so digging Bruce Greenwood
There's
as
a couple moments. There's a couple moments. I guess for me, the big one is when Selina's suggesting that Bruce come forward as Batman, and he's just kind of like, "What? No." I don't know, Dragon. To me, it's like that seems like it would be such a big moment of Batman, and from what I've read, it's a big moment in the comic as well, where Batman can free himself, but he just can't bring himself to because of the sake of the mission. And I'm not meaning to slam Bruce Greenwood here. I'm just saying, it feels like there was something missing from that line delivery a little bit. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I just don't agree with it. But I get what you're saying, though.
All right.
Let's see. So again, what's so great, which is with the Batman early in his career, though, I like how the Ripper, I like how we parallel like an early Batman who's not quite at the peak. He's not at the peak of being the real again, the fact you can see a Bruce Wayne in this Batman is that he's not to the point of being he's not breaking bones. He's not Crazy Steve, as Tiki would put it, yet. He's not to the point of
he's far from Crazy Steve.
By no means is he a Frank Miller Batman. He's not the Dark Knight Returns Batman by any stretch. And he's not the whole
more accurately All-Star Batman and Robin Batman.
Yeah. We're not to a point where he's again, I'm using a positive example of he's not to a point of where he's the Batman that gets so harsh and so brutal that he's scared Nightwing leaves him.
Right.
God. He's not to that point yet. Where he's the idea of it's kind of a green eye, not a green eye. It's kind of a doe-eyed Batman almost, a very human-eyed Batman, where the Ripper is a wake-up call for him that shows him what his future could be. We'll get into more specifics of that when we get to the Ripper, but it's what his future could be if he were to cut himself off from his human ties. If he cut himself off from his human ties, if he just looked at the world as Batman instead of Bruce Wayne, if he wasn't connected to Gotham itself, if he looked at Gotham purely as the mission. Bruce keeps touting out through this whole thing, and it's great. I like it thematically, where he keeps saying, it's the mission, Alfred. We gotta follow the mission. Again, it's a Bruce Wayne who thinks we can just, this mission is all that. Life's worth living. It's all that matters. Me being able to go out in this costume. Where again, a man dedicated to a mission could turn out like Jack the Ripper, a man who's just committed to a mission to purify things. And oh boy, it's a doozy. Again, Victorian Bruce, I think is great. I like how, and this thing I like mentioning Harvey Dent. Tiki. I love that. I love how progressive.
Talk about Harvey Dent now, because that's the thing. I was kind of dancing around some of the side characters.
I was going to wait for Harvey till after we get to the characters.
Okay, but the one thing I will say about Harvey, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of jumping onto what I'm going to say, is I love that Bruce. It's he's not a huge Harvey Dent fan, but at the same time, he's sort of just sticking by him to save face.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, basically sticking by him because he's a good guy. It's as Selina points out, many people would have just, many people would have just kind of left the drunkard Harvey Dent, alone while he's embarrassing others. But no, you stuck by him because you're a good guy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I love that. I love how alienated Bruce Wayne is in this, where he is he's a progressive guy who is different from the other men. Literally every other male character in this movie is not a progressive thinker. He's ahead of his time in that regard. He's a suffragist almost. He's in support of women.
Sure.
Yeah, and I love how involved he is in Gotham. That's where I'm digging the Bruce Wayne stuff.
I love the World's Fair thing, Dragon. I'm sure you knew that I would go gaga over the World's Fair thing.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like, again,
I'm a huge sucker for World's Fair stuff, folks. That's one of my big, like that perks my interest.
yeah, and again, like the mission, the mission to protect Gotham, and in connection, we see him proactively doing things like the World's Fair. To make Gotham a better place. Like he kind of builds a utopia for Gotham through the World's Fair, like a show of like what Gotham could be, what we could turn Gotham into. Again, what Gotham should be instead of a place where a boy's parents get murdered. All right, and yeah, it's nice. Like he's trying to do more than just fight crime. Again, that's why Batman is used sparingly. He's trying to do more as Bruce Wayne and just be kind of like the guy caring about these women being murdered than than various other people, just kind of writing them off like, oh yeah, they're from Skinner's End, who cares? More on I guess kind of the logistics of Gotham and then Gothamites later on. But let's talk about Selina Kyle.
Okay, this was a pleasant surprise for me, Dragon, because I got to admit, with Catwoman, it's like Catwoman, when done right, is great, but the thing is, I feel like she's a little bit like overexposed in some ways, and I feel like I've seen some stories where she's just kind of there because, like, hey, look, it's Catwoman. She's doing her Catwoman thing. But Dragon, I think they use Catwoman perfectly in this story. This is honestly one of my favorite interpretations of Catwoman.
She feels very Darwin Cook Catwoman to me, which is that was like one of the best stories of Catwoman. That's what gives her the. I think the best way to describe it, that run of Catwoman from Darwin Cook kind of gives us the Catwoman we have in the Arkham games. It kind of gives us like the Grey Delisle's Catwoman from the Arkham games and the cat suit with like the zip up thing, like that design alone, but also just kind of like that cadence, like she's cool under pressure. Visually, she looks a lot like kind of the Darwin Cook Catwoman, and again, unfortunately, Darwin Cook no longer with us. I met the guy; he was wonderful. It was a great pleasure, but I'm just saying. I think I coined that comparison because again, we have a very very smart, she's very intelligent, and interestingly, without being a thief. I love that it's so unconventional. Catwoman's always a thief whenever we see her, but we do something completely different with that, yet is still undeniably Catwoman. It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, Selina, she's Selina's usually like in the shadows and just kind of writes off kind of humanity and kind of writes off Gotham for the most part. Where in this case, Jennifer Carpenter, she's a great Selina Kyle. She's smart and seductive without.
I think Jennifer Carpenter, performance-wise, honestly, kind of steals the show. I think she's the MVP.
I agree with you there. I mean, I like Bruce Wayne as Bruce Wayne, but I would say if I have to give the one person, it's Jennifer Carpenter all the way. Yes.
Yeah, she adds like a sense of vulnerability to Selina Kyle, just given the time period that we haven't really seen in the character in a while.
Yeah, I love that Selina essentially is a Batman Sherlock Holmes. She is not only look-wise, but in character, she is very much Irene Adler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like how we naturally work in the cat motif. We don't beat anyone over the head.
I agree. I think it's so smart that they didn't just have her have an alter ego or something like that. Like, hey, she's another vigilante.
Because we had three cat moments, but were very important cat moments. One, when she's in the alley luring the Ripper, we see like a cat in the alley, like, oh hey, look, cat woman. Later on, of course, the biggie is she has a really great backstory. I mean,
kind of like a weird, like Robin-esque backstory in a way.
Yeah, the circus is big, and I like how we dress because our circus was
big time back in that time period.
Let me say this too. I mean, Scott Snyder would love this movie, and I'm sure Scott Snyder loves because he loves the Victorian era. He loves the history of Gotham, particularly the 1800s of Gotham. The whole I've mentioned this before, and we whenever we talked about Gotham, when we do the flashbacks to got the old families of Gotham. It's very much in the 1800s, Tiki, and I'm sure he loves Gotham by Gaslight, the book. I'm sure he'd get a kick out of the movie. what I'm saying is, like, this whole, like, circus lineage of just, like, how, Bruce Wayne, he'd studied, tightrope acts, like, how he, like, he learned acrobatics from the circus. And the idea is Selena, she went from working in the circus, which is kind of close to the show business, and down the line she becomes like an actress and singer, which again is kind of the.
I love how she incorporates her backstory into her act.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's Jennifer Carpenter singing, by the way?
No, it is not.
Oh, okay.
It's my
okay,
favorite.
You don't have to be so harsh about it, dude. I didn't know.
No. I'm sorry. I'm excited to tell you who it is. That's why.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not Jennifer Carpenter. It's Gray DeLisle.
Okay. That's why you're excited.
That's why I'm excited. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that sound like I was just like.
Yeah, you kind of made me like, oh, silly Tiki. Of course, in what universe would Jennifer Carpenter do her own singing?
Oh no, but nothing compares to the lovely singing voice of Grey Griffin. Oh my
yeah.
Yes. You got a whole YouTube channel about singing. Oh boy. Anyway, yes, that lion tamer background, it's great. Like, she had the abusive father who abused the lions and almost like threatened to shoot him every day, and she basically left her father to the lions to defend himself.
Yeah.
And, it's gruesome, but that's an awesome way to kind of get your cat.
Which also, by the way, sort of echoes the Hugo Strange thing in this movie.
In a way, yes, you do have definitely a lion's den vibe there, and like kind of the monsters that men create, Speaking of which, speaking of her father for a moment there, I like that. Speaking of Hugo Strange, kind of like a Freudian figure within the film, an alienist by the 19th century. We see with that story. I love that we were told that story and it holds such merit because it's not a forgettable story. It's good and explains like the whip. And again, we have a good explanation. Like, that's the only Catwoman thing she has to her name, really, is the whip.
Sure.
And it's enough. Again, it's enough. And that story later on explaining it makes it go like
the whip, the fact that she can hold her own in a fight.
Yeah, it does wonders. And I love that with that story we learned that she has a history of negative male relationships in her life that builds that persona, while not Catwoman, builds the persona of her as a defender of women, of like no one's going to speak for kind of the lower class women of Gotham, which essentially she is like the successful version of what those women are. Like, what we see with Ivy, she's a burlesque dancer. Selena is the acceptable version of a burlesque dancer where you can perform on stage. And again, we see in her act with the lovely singing voice, she is very risque in her act for the era. There's basically a can of it's kind of a flashing can essentially.
Right.
And again, that's risky, but it's going to get applauded because it's deemed higher class.
Mm-hmm.
Again, she's an orphan like Bruce, and she has a connection via Leslie, which is nice. Again, really, I so buy the relationship.
God, I can't wait to talk about Tompkins Dragon.
I so buy the relationship between Selena and Bruce, and I really like the chemistry they have.
I really do too. I think it's I think there's some great stuff there.
Okay, let's talk about the big A. Let's talk about not Captain America. Let's talk about Alfred.
Right. So Alfred doesn't really have a ton to do in this movie, but he kind of comes in to save the day at the very end with some characters we'll talk about in a bit, which I thought was great.
He feels very, by the way, Buffy fans are sure to freak out because that's Anthony Head. He's Giles from Buffy. So
which is totally Buffy's Alfred already.
You see, Bruce Timm's a huge Buffy fan, and there are times when the network executives tried to make Batman a lot like Buffy, and he's had to balance that out. It's like, okay, no, we can't mix certain things. We can't mix here, okay. Yeah, to me, he felt very much like Watson to Batman here. He felt very much like Bruce's Watson.
And of course, this is kind of sticking to the law. Dragon, I want to see the day when we get a lousy Alfred, all right? I want to see the day. I'm fascinated by the concept of a lousy Alfred. At this point, I'd be really interested in it.
God, like, who can you think of? Who would be like the worst Alfred ever?
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, can you? I can't really.
I mean, like Tommy Wiseau. I don't know. God.
It'd be like Alfred if he was kicked in the head, but still, like, was it really like Anyway, maybe it's like saying.
The
Maybe
thing
it's
is, the trouble with Alfred is that, of course he's got to be an older actor, and older actors are usually like very well established professional actors. So
I can imagine Ed Begley. Well, no, Ed Begley Jr. would be wonderful as Alfred. And I think I was going to
he'd
say
be
like he could be.
wonderful as Alfred. Yes, yes, he would.
He would. I was thinking like a ticked off Ed Begley Jr. is like, oh, I'm so sick of working for Batman. God, it's always.
Look, there's obviously certain actors where the role of Alfred, like, could you imagine Michael Cera as Alfred?
That'd be awful.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, just inherently, it just would not be a good idea to put certain actors in that role.
All right, fair enough. Let's not dwell on the what ifs.
I actually think we have a winner there. I think Michael Cera would make the world's worst Alfred.
However, and I really hate to say this, I mean, again with the chemistry that they
don't say it. Don't say that Michael Cera would make a good Alfred.
I'm not saying he would make a good
Come
Alfred.
on, I'm the guy who's usually defending Michael Cera.
All I'm saying is he wasn't the one time I've ever liked Michael Cera was in Lego Batman.
Oh god.
And he had a good rapport with Alfred.
Oh no. Oh no.
That's all I'm willing to say. Anyway.
That would be wild, because then you'd have to get an actor even younger than Michael Cera to play Bruce Wayne.
Oh god. Nightmare inducing. Okay, anyway.
We're going off on a crazy tangent here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just had a great idea for a young Alfred, but
oh no.
Freddie Highmore.
Yeah, oh yeah, Freddie Highmore. Look, Freddie Highmore can be younger than Bruce Wayne and still completely pull off that
What's
role.
cool is Scott Snyder, he did write some young Alfred stories where basically
Alfred was like a little brother instead of a father figure.
That would be interesting.
I mean, it'd be completely different.
We're going to go on a lot of Alfred tangents. We got to get back on point.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
I'm having so many Batman ideas with Alfred right now. We got to. Okay, anyway, let's see. So what was that? He's definitely what I really love with this Alfred here is I love how he's definitely running the Bruce Wayne appearances, very much like we saw with like an Alfred and Batman Begins, where he's very much saying, well, you have to keep up appearances. You got to take up hobbies, buy expensive things. You got to live. You might have some fun accidentally, Master Wayne, that sort of thing. Or in this case, Alfred, he's running all of Bruce Wayne's public appearances, and he's definitely He's definitely very willing at the beginning here in Batman's beginnings. He's very, very a willing participant. He's not like oh, sir, I wish you'd stop this self-destructive habit. I really do. He's not there yet. He has like a nurturing softness to him, and there is a hope that he has hope that Batman is. He's kind of hoping that Batman's going to get distracted in a way. He has a hope that Batman will be distracted from his mission, but in reality, he's kind of realizing, no, it's not the case. But I think basically, like Alfred presents a softness that Bruce, again, he's kind of wrapped up in the mission and he's not seeing. And again, that's the danger of Batman becoming Jack the Ripper. And by the end, again, without giving away certain things, by the end, it's Alfred kind of presents Batman with like, hey, this is the path you've chosen, the path of family, the path of wellness, the path of connections, basically the path of a bad family, if you will.
Mm-hmm. That's
nice. Again, Alfred kind of presenting what Bruce kind of knows in his heart, but he won't say. So, good Alfred.
All right. So let's move on to your guy.
Yes, good old James Gordon. Not Jim Gordon in this, and that's very important. James Gordon.
So Gordon, he's just kind of the cornerstone of morality in this story.
Yes, I really do like how Gordon is. I like how he has a big role in the movie. I always like that. We have some good Batman Gordon scenes. I'll say that much.
Oh, we have one in particular that I just ate up.
Yes. What's cool about Gordon here is that the beginnings of the Gotham police force, and again, we really play with the setting with James Gordon here, where he is, he's starting out. Think about it. You're in the early, well, you're in the 19th century, late 1800s, early 19th century. You're starting with the police force that it's starting out with the greatest potential for corruption, but right now, back in the day, in the police force of that era. the cops, you did start with a very honest working man sort of cop, which again is what Jim Gordon's very used to. Like, there are a lot of Irish cops back in the day, and as we see with Bullock in the story, he's very much kind of a classic Chief O'Hara type.
I feel like we see the corruption in this story more in the prison system.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the point is, like, with the prison systems, we see there is potential for corruption, but it hasn't really hit the police force yet.
Right.
And that there's like Gordon's running a very tight anti-corruption ship, it would seem, in this, and it's very interesting that like Batman, he's on a mission to keep Gotham pure and free from evil. And I really there's this great bit in that meeting scene I'll allude to a little bit here, where again Gordon's very anti-corruption. Like, he just wants like a safe haven. It's very much like the Gordon I love.
God, yeah. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I loved it.
There's like there's this great kind of line where it's like it's very in line with what I love with Jim Gordon, where he tries to keep his family separate from he's keeping his family life separate from his professional life, which can get very dark and get very dreary. So he wants to kind of keep like all the corruption and crime he deals with separate from home life, and we kind of show that in this movie in a very interesting light, and a very it's very poignant, let's say. Mm. Okay, let's move on. Let's just talk about kind of the 19th century Gotham. Let's talk about our supporting characters, kind of the setting, all the world building. Let's talk about all that sorts of fun.
Yeah, you want to run through the characters first or the world building first?
Yeah, you want to get into the characters? You sound like you're biting into the teeth to get into some of these characters.
I am kind of, yeah.
Let's do that. Let's start with the characters.
Okay, let's... First of all, you just mentioned him, and there's not really a ton to say, but Bullock is wonderful in this story.
Yeah, John DiMaggio as Bullock, and he's very much like a sexist Chief O'Hara. That's really what he is.
I love how he's got the nickname Mad Dog.
Yep. Well, Bulldog.
Oh, Bulldog. You're right. Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. Sister Leslie. We got to talk about Sister Leslie.
Honestly, this is probably my favorite part of the whole movie, Dragon.
And voiced by Greg Griffin.
Yeah. There's one moment in particular where Bruce Wayne, it's early on in the movie, Bruce Wayne and Leslie Tompkins are having a carriage ride. It's kind of a plot exposition, sort of talking about what happened to Ivy at the start of the movie. And there's a bit, Dragon, there's a bit that I just love where Bruce Wayne is like, oh, I have to be going, sister. Tonight I have, and then she stops him and she's like, say no more. I will not hear a lie, and I know what you rich bachelor types like to do. And I love that, Drake, because it's like it humanizes her. It's like she's still true to her roots as a nun, but at the same time, she's all too forgiving of Bruce Wayne and his flaws.
I love Leslie. Leslie Thompson is always a great character, created by Denny O'Neil. She's a wonderful character, and of
except
course,
in Gotham season 3.
Except in season 3, but again, they've won us over on her in season
Notable
4.
Exception.
However, they did win us back on her in 4 so far.
They did, surprisingly.
I know, amazingly, folks. I mean, they killed her in season 3, all in but physical action. They killed her. But well, the point is, I mean, again, like classic Leslie, the older version of Leslie Tompkins. The kindly doctor who knew Thomas Wayne. That's the Leslie Tompkins who is just, it's classically what I know her to be, and you'll see that soon enough in the animated series when we get to that point. But Leslie Tompkins. I love here is that Leslie Tompkins, Paul Dini always had this quote about Leslie Tompkins I found so true and I found so wonderful. It was always like my anchor for who this character is. And it was literalized in this movie where Paul Dini best described Leslie Tompkins as Bruce's angel of mercy. And there's a moment in this movie that, one, she's a nun, so it's very close to the angel of mercy part. But for me, the moment that it really kind of struck a chord with me is it's a beautiful shot. It's very Mignola-esque, and I love it. Where Bruce, he's too late, and then Leslie has a beautiful death scene in this movie. She gets killed off, and she faces the Ripper, and she forgives the Ripper and says, like, I
love how she makes such a point of that too.
Like, I'm not going to scream, I'm not going to panic like your other victims. I'm not going to put up a fight. Just know that I forgive you. And that's what Leslie, again, she's very in character what Leslie Tompkins would do. And I think Grey Delisle, it's a great, Grey Griffin Delisle. I'm trying to break myself of the Delisle's habit. Again, I want to show my respect, but she does such a wonderful take on on Leslie here. I thought it was such a great pull. I never would put together Greg Griffin and Leslie Tompkins, if I'm being honest, but it's such a no-brainer in this movie, though.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like the moment where Bruce realizes he's too late, and the one woman who is the last tether short of Alfred he had to his parents is dead before him, and he kneels in front of the gravestone. And that giant angel, literally the angel visage, like the angel kind of statue, like the angel headstone in front of him, with Leslie, the dead nun, at his feet. It's such a beautiful, poignant image for me. It speaks volumes about what I love about Leslie Tompkins. She's, and I love that like through the point that that's the button that the Ripper pushes with Bruce, is that he mentions the nun and he gets really pissed off.
yeah, that's
and
great.
Also the funeral scene of Leslie Tompkins too is just, again, like you see again the animation on Bruce being really depressed at that funeral. It's like, oh my god, that's another powerful scene for him. But yeah, really good. Leslie is one of my favorite supporting characters of the whole thing, if I'm being honest. Let's see, Hugo Strange. We made him an alienist, essentially an old school psychologist / psychiatrist. He's the asylum man. He was also kind of a Ripper suspect. He was a red herring, vaguely.
My favorite bit with Strange is when he's kind of trying to play to the psychosis of the Ripper as he's about to be killed.
I know, you're right. It's great. And what's so cool, Tiki, is that he knows who Batman is. I mean, that's classically what Hugo Strange is known for, knowing who Batman is. And at that funeral, he absolutely calls him on. He says, oh, yes, he's speaking the mask, ironically. Like, hey, oh, yes, you're Bruce Wayne, but you're actually Batman. You wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Something I really loved in the writing, though, this is what the fun of the Victorian setting. They do two things. Well, one I'll speak to when we talk about the world building. With Hugo Strange, though, I love he's speaking of like this new method of treating the mentally ill, where it's I lobotomize them. The whole the old school nail like chisel hammer lobotomy. Which is terrifying, but again, like that we're addressing that as like a new cutting edge practice, though. That archaic method is like, this is Gotham's future, lobotomy.
Right. So Harvey Dent was my personal red herring.
Yeah, I think here's the thing. On the commentary, I love marking this. Like Harvey Dent was like, he's so obviously the red. Bruce Timm loves good red herrings, and you see this in Batman Beyond. They get a lot of good red herrings in these works, and Harvey Dent definitely fits the mold there.
I'm just picturing Fred from Pup Named Scooby Doo going off on a rant about red herrings.
Good. Yes, and he's basically Harvey. Jim Creek, the writer of this movie, he has on the nose lines, but I think they're filled with such kind of they're filled. I don't know if it's the performance or just the way it's written. I don't know what it is, but I feel there's an earnestness or there's a genuineness to these lines that makes them not feel as cheesy, but still feel like they could go cheesy very easily. Where our tip off to the Two-Face, one throwaway line saying, "Oh, Harvey, you're almost like a completely different person when you're drunk,"
and also the Jekyll and Hyde comparison.
I love the Jekyll and Hyde comparison.
Which, really, that's all we need. That's really all we need for this story.
And again, Harvey's such a prick in this story. He really is.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of the experience I had with Batman Telltale Dragon.
Yeah.
I gotta say.
Also, I love that we gave Harvey a mustache. I mean, never since Billy D. Williams have we given Harvey Dent a mustache.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, man. What I love with Harvey is that
going around cheating on his wife. He's just very clearly just getting drunk and jealous, and he shows the cops to Bruce Wayne. He's just all kinds of bad in the story.
And he speaks to the class divide. There's a huge class. There's this Gotham. We'll speak to world building for a moment here. We do have a very definite class-defined Gotham, where there's the elitists, there's the people at Skid Row, and there's very few the men.
Got a Tale of Two Cities kind of quality to it.
Which, of course, I mean, Dark Knight Rises. Definitely a Tale of Two Cities influence there. Yes, and again, the fact that Harvey at the end of the day, he's the mean drunk who sides with Gotham's elite. He sides with Gotham's elite very easily, which makes him a monster in comparison to Bruce Wayne.
Definitely. So we got to talk about the Robins.
Yeah, the Robin. I always thought the Robins was such a clever. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's. I don't know. It can't be in the book. No, it can't be in the book.
I was in love with them, Dragon.
I know.
I love the whole I wish they had more to do. Honestly,
I love that. It's such a great one, it's a good reinvention, like a good like Elseworlds kind of thing to do in the story, and secondly, it's just a way of like appreciating the history of the Robins. I'm not talking about all the BS, like, hey, and then you have Damian Wayne, and hey, now you got all these other potential Robins in the field, Stephanie Brown. Like, no, there's only guys. I don't care what anyone says. At the end of the day, there are 3 Robins and technically Carrie Kelly. There are
I would have
3
accepted
Robins.
Carrie Kelly in this movie, Dragon. I really would have, as like an orphan girl.
But I'm saying, like, everyone loves Carrie Kelly, but when it comes to like the boy Robins, there are only 3. It's Dick, Jason, and Tim. I like that age-wise they reflect it. Like Dick Grayson.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That was a good touch.
I like that Dick was the most mature. Jason was the most troubled. Again, Jason was purely what he was in the
I like
comics.
how Tim is kind of like almost sort of like a tiny Tim caricature.
Yeah, yeah. And again, the gag is Tiki. By the way, is that everyone in the fan community they love Tim. Tim Drake is like the fan favorite Robin. Everyone loves because again they just lump Dick Grayson in with Nightwing, so it's always Nightwing before he's a Robin, and Tim Drake is like he's the favorite Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Todd is just always like he's just like a little prick, you know. He's a little a-hole who stole the tires from the Batmobile. That's very much what he is in this. It's very much what he is here. You know, he's trying to. Well, we'll get more into that later. Let's see. Ivy, you know, Ivy, very again, I like a human Ivy whenever we can get it, and she's a burlesque dancer here, and a burlesque dancer with a backstory. You know, she's a girl who tried to make a good life for herself, and this is what happens, and she's kind of a defeated person who gets very gruesomely murdered.
Yeah, yeah, good way to good character to start the movie with, I think.
I I mean, I appreciate even like just the name drops alone, even if they're not like major characters. I mean, Ivy has a brief role, which is memorable. Cyrus Gold, for example, just we need a big bruiser for Bruce Wayne to go up against. Let's make it Cyrus Gold. You know, it's like
Why not?
Solomon Grundy, Butch Gilzine.
Yeah,
Cyrus
yeah.
Gold. Also, it was mentioned, and it was a great mention just in writing alone. Miss Cooper, as in Harriet Cooper from the '60s Batman show, she was Bruce Wayne's cook in this. She made the soup that Bruce Wayne was eating.
Oh God.
Let's see, Mayor Tolliver. It's a Batman pulled one of the various mayors of Gotham City, probably murdered, but I don't know. Barbara, of course, not that Bar. Well, actually, yeah, that Barbara. Yeah, it was. Yeah, not Batgirl, but Barbara Keene, if you will.
Uh-huh.
See, now. Last character, then we'll just get into the world building. Marlene. Now Marlene, and again, there are 2 things that are driving me crazy in this movie that were not intentional, but it's so accidental and so wonderful that I love it. There's a lot of phantasm touches in this movie. None of them were intentional, and that astonishes me. But according to the commentary, there were no phantasm pulls. I'm assuming they were accidental, unless the animators were working in some really great Easter eggs there.
Uh-huh.
But I don't want to spoil anything for Digger. Let's just say we have a lot of great phantasm. There's a lot of phantasm in this movie in places, which I really delighted me. Surprised me. And also Marlene. So Marlene is voiced by Tara Strong.
Yes.
You know, she's the old crone. She's the old like crone from Skinner's Edge. And she's essentially, this might be Tara Strong doing this on her own. I think she just might have slipped it in there and just no one noticed. She's essentially Marlene sounds very much like Harleen. And
yeah,
I think
I noticed that for sure.
I mean, my take on it, I imagine the average Batman fan is going to notice like, hey, that's the sound of the Arkham game, Harley Quinn, and she wears all red. She sounds very much like a bitter, drunk version of Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That was to me. I read that as okay. They're not doing Joker, but they're doing like a little Harley Quinn. But so that's kind of why I read it. So anyway, it was the reinventions of the characters, if you will.
Okay. So yeah, in terms of the world building, Dragon, there, like you said, there's definitely a good class divide. I love the World's Fair. I love sort of like the false facade of hope that represents, sort of the big Eiffel Tower like Ferris wheel that's eventually gonna come crashing down. I love the symbolism of that.
Yeah, I'll mention this. While they didn't reference Phantasm, what they did reference all over the place, and there were too many references for me to count and list here, folks, but just take my word for it. There are a lot of old movie references in this, where they reference practically all the Sherlock Holmes movies are referenced in this film. somewhere. And like there's touches of the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes. There are touches of the young Sherlock Holmes. There are all sorts of Sherlock Holmes are interspersed throughout this thing. And with the Ferris wheel, the reason I bring it up is that one, while not Sherlock Holmes, is referencing The Third Man.
Okay.
Classic Orson Welles movie. Big Ferris wheel scene. Anyway, keep going.
I mean, no, that's about all I got. Like I said, there's a very kind of Charles Dickens-like atmosphere to this movie, which is cool. I like how the movie sort of like lives up to its title. There's a lot of gas lamps in the movie.
Oh yeah. That's like the first image we get in the movie too, which is great. One of my favorite. I mean, it's a great setting for a simpler, more direct and cruel Gotham. That's the thing. It's a Gotham that, when you boil down, we're looking at a what if on Gotham. Like, what if we saw Gotham in the 19th century? And again, what it is it feels very much like, okay, this is a Gotham I could easily see growing into a modern day Gotham. When again, it's a reinvention, so we're never going to have to worry about seeing a modern day Gotham. But at the same time, there are certain inalienable truths about Gotham City, and basically it's like, what if we just took what we know to be Gotham, where people are mean to each other, like, it's a very crime-ridden place, but instead we just had people be very, not crime-ridden, but just really, really horrible to each other, It's just like a simple and direct cruelty, where again, like there are children on the street being coerced into crime. Corruption is. It's like corruption is commonplace, but not.
By the way, one of the things we didn't speak to with the Robins is that they absolutely have an Oliver Twist vibe to them.
Oh, and by the way, yeah, that guy, the Bill Dust, the giant guy, kind of lumping him into the business. He is modeled after that guy. He's modeled after the Borge guy.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
Like he's direct pull, and that's what the name is referencing. I think the actor's name, like Bill Dust or something. That's what the it's referencing that guy very directly.
So. I actually played that character in a radio play in middle school, Dragon.
Were you any good?
Yeah, I was trying harder than most of the other students. I'll give myself that much.
I've been there. Okay. So let's see. So corruption is. I like that corruption is commonplace, but it's not over the top. Where again, Bruce Wayne just assumes he can bribe a guard because that's just the climate of the place. Where again, people are just horrible in Gotham for the most part.
Yeah. Which, of course, is sort of the inherent thing with Gotham City as an entity.
Yeah. But again, it's like, if they're shown an example, they could better themselves. So again, there's a lot of truth to that. Let's see. The 1800s, of course, play into the Gothic atmosphere very well. Plays into the very kind of classic Art Deco Gotham we all know. Mainly the Burton. Speaking of just the whole 1989, it all plays very much into the Gothic Burton-esque kind of like large Gothic structures. It plays very like tomato into it.
Which is honestly sort of an aesthetic in Gotham City. Gotham City, I feel like we've sadly gotten away from a little bit.
A little, yeah.
Especially after the Nolan trilogy, like post Nolan, I really feel like the whole, the Art Deco kind of over the top giant statues and everything is kind of fallen by the wayside.
Well, I can't speak to the future. I will say the glimpses we've gotten, mainly, if I'm being honest, mainly in Justice League, we've gotten back to the old Gothic structure a little, but again, only in brief tastes. So it's not really.
Mm-hmm.
When we saw Batman in Justice League in Gotham City, it was Gothic like the Burton film, so we had that much going for it. That was about all, though, in terms of like the Gothic atmosphere. Anyway, so again, we have some great set pieces that they're like expanded and utilized from modern Batman. Like, these are things we see in other works of Batman, but they are played into the Victorian setting very, very simply. Again, like, they're great homages to Batman, but placed so perfectly and so plot relevantly. Such a plot-relevant way into the 19th century. For example, again, the World's Fair set piece represents, as Tiki said, it represents Gotham's hope and what it could be. Arkham is an old-school sanitarium in a horror show.
Mm-hmm.
I love the take on Arkham.
It's literally just a pit.
Yeah, it reminds me of, what it reminded me of, based on, because I love the documentary so much. It reminded me of, because again, I haven't watched the movies, folks, I don't have the heart for it, but in the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary, when we, one of the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, we see the origin of, I feel so bad speaking of Leslie Tompkins earlier being a nun, but the birth of Freddy Krueger, it's a nun raped by 1,000, I think it's like 1,000 maniacs.
Oh, poor Leslie Tompkins.
What I'm saying is, Miss Amanda Krueger. That's the nun's name in question. Amanda Krueger. Basically, it's a whole just the low security low level of security they had back in those days. It was just a giant, if not a giant hole, it's like a giant area filled to the brim with crazies, and that's kind of what we see in Arkham here. It's like, oh my god, it's so true and so mad for that time. My favorite element, again, aside from the Zeppelins, of course, the Zeppelins, big pull from Batman the Animated Series. We have Zeppelins who are, you know, big, powerful, and dangerous, and shown at a ground level here. My favorite element, I love the maze-like alleyway so much. That is my favorite set piece in this whole thing. I love like how every alleyway in Gotham, again, it speaks to where that character comes from. You know, where again it's like a turn down the wrong alley, you know, orphans Batman, where it's like the buildings are so closed in this Victorian Gotham City. They're alley, you can't escape alleys. It's so labyrinthian. You know, it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Kind of Gore-Valdez to a degree. To a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, okay, so I think it speaks enough to, you know, again, the kind of the vibe of 19th century Gotham. Let's move on to, let's talk about the meat and potatoes, folks. We danced around it long enough. My feet are getting tired. Let's talk about the mystery itself.
I'm just gonna rip it off like the Band-Aid Dragon. I'm not gonna do it delicately. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
So Gordon is Jack the Ripper, folks.
Yeah, that's right, folks.
I gotta admit, when I first saw this, I thought, like, wait a minute, am I dreaming? Gordon's the villain? Am I like daydreaming here? Did I fall asleep?
Now you're having like the whole like fish moony eye thing. Like,
oh god. No, I mean, okay, Dragon, here we go. Like, what speaks so good about this mystery, what makes it work so well, is that Gordon is such a morally upstanding character. And it's like, it's great that he wants to rid Gotham City of crime so much that it just kind of takes like a very simple leap in logic to be like, you know, he's very extreme about the methods that he'll go to.
Yeah, I love is in dialogue we have it so well explained where his, you know, where this crazy Jack the Ripper persona comes from. It's very well explained, and it's I mean the Gordon reveal itself, I agree with you very much so that yes, it is a takeoff of how Batman could go too far. If Batman closed himself off and was purely focused on the mission, he could absolutely end up I'm not, like, again, I've always been saying this about what I like about these two characters, in, you know, Batman and Gordon. Traditionally, I guess the way to delineate would be there's Jim Gordon and there's James Gordon.
God,
because again, I mean, this sounds silly, but honestly, I was watching the movie, and Billy, just in case you're wondering, again, I'm fine with it because it's Elseworlds. All right, if it was not Elseworlds, I would have a major problem.
All right, I can buy that,
because I'd have to write angry letters to Jim.
Like
Craig.
If they tried pulling this in like one of the one of those Batman Robin things that you told me about,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, if I would have to somehow, I'd have to write a letter, or I'd have to the Jim Craig's. Okay, look,
and he'd do it too, folks.
I'm saying, look, Batman, Harley Quinn, that was one. Okay, look, that was a mixed bag. I get your needed Paul Dini. In this case,
can you imagine if just randomly in Batman Harley Quinn they made Gordon into a psychopath?
Like, oh god, just. Boy, but with the delineation between James and Jim here, it's like, you know, Jim is the friendly term that Batman calls Gordon by. Instead of commissioner, it's usually Jim. Jim, you have to listen to me. Or it's again instead of James. It's very there's a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's see. Let the decompress here. Let's see. Yeah, it's very surprising, but it makes sense. And retroactively, the cool thing about it, and this is what's great about it on the rewatch, by the way, folks, is that retroactively it washes away any plot holes.
There's so on a rewatch, there's so many things to keep track of. There's, I think a big tell is during the Tompkins funeral. I think it is where Hugo Strange is approaching Bruce Wayne, like, "Hey, the killer is here,"
Yeah.
And then I think like the next thing we see is Gordon walking up.
Yeah, think about it. He's at the funeral, and we have two moments that happen at the funeral that only someone who was at that funeral would really be able to tell. Where Hugo Strange, he says he's making a meeting with Bruce Wayne. That Bullock overhears, by the way. Bullock probably just kind of mentioned it in passing to Gordon. He says, "Hey, the commissioner's wondering if you're going to the memorial." I says, "Yeah, I'll be right there." So I said, "Oh yeah, he's talking with Hugo Strange. You can view over there." So okay. Hugo Strange knows something, which means I have to kill him. And by the way, what I love about this, if you really want to be technical and say, as Hugo Strange does in his last moments, as Tiki pointed out. Hey, you can't kill me. I'm not a woman. I don't fit your psychological profile. You can't kill me. Think about it. He doesn't kill him. He throws him into the pit where the inmates kill him. So that's a technique. It's a loophole.
I like that. I like that.
and Marlene, in her younger days, and again, she isn't Skinner's. She does mention this at the funeral. In her younger days, she was like Ivy. She was a streetwalker. So again, fits the profile.
And Dragon, if there's one complaint I have about this, it's kind of like a very nitpicky thing, but I feel like once he's revealed, they kind of go a little bit like, hey, we got to earn that R rating. We have to have Gordon say the word whore and slut a bunch of times.
They said that throughout the movie, though. It's not just on him, though.
No, I know, but Gordon goes really extreme,
Dude, what's interesting? That we never heard Jack the Ripper speak, so it's kind of like Jack the Ripper saying things that he says in the letters. Though he does say that all in the letters, so it is kind of
That's a good point. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really fascinating stuff there.
The Barbara thing, the Barbara scene is a big sort of.
Now, here's the best thing about the commentary. I got to mention this with the Barbara scene. So it's so funny. They had a lot of fun talking about this in the commentary. Jim Krieg, and this is why I like, as much as I'm like, Jim Krieg, why do you have to do half of that stuff I didn't like in Batman? But at the same time, it's like Jim Krieg, he's writing in the script, and he appreciates on the commentary, because in the commentary it's his first time watching the completed film, so he's like marveling at it, and he realizes like, oh my god, when I was writing the script, he's telling this to Bruce Timm, like right next to him, oh my god, I realized all the stuff I wrote was like, and we don't see her face.
Right.
How hard that is to animate, because originally in the original drafts it was like she's wearing a veil at the funeral, and of course they wrote her out of the funeral because veils do not animate well. It's really hard to animate a veil. And basically, you'll think about it in the scene where James Gordon wakes up from the nightmare, and he comforts Barbara. We focus on those hand shots, which are nice, but for a reason, because we don't want to give away on the left side of her face. She has all these acid scars.
Right.
And you'll notice, if you rewatch it, like whatever, she's always turning. She's always like,
definitely,
always in profile. She's never shown herself. It's like she's on the There's that great moment where she wants to. She's about to walk outside, and Gordon says, "No, Barbara, wait inside," because he knows the minute she steps outside, that Batman's gonna know something's up.
I love how. I love how when he's confronting Selina. Selina came to him with really, really good information, but at the same time, he's betraying Bruce Wayne's confidence, and god damn it, that's a good enough reason to kill the whore.
But yeah, fascinating.
It's almost kind of like it fits Hugo Strange's kind of like psychological profile of like logistically, there's no good reason to kill Selina, but she just kind of fits the mold,
I mean, the closest thing to him breaking his model is with Leslie, but at the same time, it is mentioned that Leslie, and like in the scene where everyone's kind of having at it with kind of complaining about Leslie before Bruce Wayne shows up, someone, I forget who, it might have been Bullock, someone calls Leslie out on the fact that, hey, all of those, all those women, all the Skinners and women, like, you're the root cause. They come to you. You bring them in. You put them out. Basically, Leslie is the root cause for them being put out on the street. So he is targeting her for that reason, which connects her to the moniker.
Sure.
Let's see. But I mean, yeah. So again, we talked about kind of the retroactively wash away any plot holes with the reveal. But again, it's taking someone. In classic, what I love about Batman and Gordon is that they're very similar men, and that they both have the mission.
Gordon is the most morally upstanding character in all of Batman, if not all of comics.
Exactly. I've always had the comparison that Gordon is Batman without the training. That he is ethically and morally, he is Batman. But again, he does not have like the same level of training and such. Again, even Scott Snyder has explored this idea of like, hey, he could be a Batman, but he would be an inferior Batman. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, we're pushing that idea of like, as a guy with Batman-esque ideas, pushing them, to a zealot-like level of achieving peace. What if Batman, didn't have those human tethers after seeing all the horrors that he's seen in Gotham? And basically, and what's cruel is that while Batman has his family as his driving force, the loss of his family as his driving force, Gordon, or the Ripper, if you will, keeps them around, keeps Barbara around as a reminder of his mission. And the idea is Gordon has kids too, which we don't see, which horrifies me, by the way. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but again, here's the thing.
I'm sorry, John. I'm getting checked out a little because this podcast is officially longer than the movie.
Oh, great. Anyway, well, okay, real quick though, something we got to mention with Gordon though is that it makes all the sense in the world that his army experiences, his training and the physical and medical, like all the stuff. And again, we see it visually done in the big reveal scene. It makes all the sense in the world that he'd have the skills to be Jack the Ripper, and it all comes together so well. And the truth is the truth of the character of Jim Gordon is that he is a guy who witnesses madness so often, has a great potential of going mad. We've seen this on Gotham. We've seen this in the comics through Scott Snyder with James Gordon Jr., who becomes a serial killer, and Barbara on Gotham. It's like there are various examples of Gordon absolutely could become a psychopath. But because again, he experiences so much horror, and what I love,
like I said, I love how it's literally his own moral code that brings him to that path.
Yeah, and the explanation we get during the big ending Ferris wheel fight, and this is where I love that he empathized with his fellow patients who were also soldiers. Like he operating on these men, he could do what he did what he could to save their lives. But at the same time, the one thing that I imagine back in the 19th century would be really, this is early, like the 1860s, but this is like the Civil War this is happening. If a guy got VD, which essentially is why he hates women, which is why he's targeting women, the thing, he can cure a man of like certain ailments, but he can't be harder to cure VD. Again, it's something that a woman would basically be killing his men through feminine wiles. But I love this. I'm fascinated by the psychology of like all that stuff. And I think it's very kind of well constructed. Well, I definitely buy the reveal.
All right.
Okay.
Favorite moments. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah. Let's get the favorite moments. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna breeze through mine rapid fire, Dragon, because I really don't like the idea that this podcast is longer than the movie. So as I mentioned, I gotta love the three Robins, especially when they're confronted by Alfred. I love that. As you said, I like that Dick is kind of sticking up for the little one. I love how they're chastising, like, hey, this isn't what Sister Leslie would want us to do on her funeral. For God's sake, come on. And of course, Alfred just sort of he's the consummate gentleman, right? Like he's the consummate father figure to all. And I love how that pays off. I wish I will say this, Dragon. I wish there was a little bit more in the middle with the Robins, but I do love the interaction with Alfred, though. Let me see. Yes. So I really like the moment where Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle get pulled over, and then they have to act like they're they're doing the dirty a little bit. It's just a very fun, very Bruce Wayne Playboy style moment. And of course, we see that Selina is a lot more comfortable with the situation than Bruce is. And I like how jealous the police officers are about the whole situation, but also how awkward it is. They're just like very caught off guard by it. So a lot of fun there. And then lastly, Dragon, probably a moment that you might have wanted to fight me on. I really think that not the final fight on the Ferris wheel. The final fight on the Ferris wheel is fine. I don't think it's as engaging as this fight. I thought the fight on the Zeppelin was just, oh God. I mean, that is some really, really good animated fight sequences right there. Dragon, there's one moment in particular with Jack and the knife very early on in the fight where he nicks Batman's eye.
Yeah.
And that did it for me, man. That really did it for me. But this fight almost kind of reminds me of like it doesn't have the emotional weight of this, but just in terms of the staging, it kind of reminds me of the train scene from Spider-Man 2, just because you've got this big out of control thing and you're sort of like jumping on and off of it. You're going on different levels. And the fight scene itself, like I said, it's very well choreographed. It's just a really ambitious segment. And I almost kind of wish that would have been I guess I understand why the Ferris wheel's the finale, because we set it up as like this visual beacon of peak, and then it's all in flames in the final sequence. So I get that. I get that. It's just the Zeppelin fight just kind of had a little bit more of a wow factor to it.
Right.
And that's it.
Okay. All right. Oh, it's kind of funny. The mustache and facial hair is the symbol of evil in this movie because all the bad characters have mustaches. Again, it's kind of like it's taking Gordon's main moniker and being it's like a foreshadow of like,
oh God.
If you really think about it, it's kind of clever.
All right.
Anyway, okay, so here are my moments. So again, one right off the top, I love the Batman Gordon visit because one in my first watch again, I was like, oh my God, it's a great Batman Gordon meeting scene right off the bat. And then on the rewatch, it has so much context with all the with the great reveals, and after all, like the red herrings and everything on the rewatch, we have all the again. It plays like it feeds into the movie playing like such a good mystery. We have very detective heavy Batman. We have various. There are a lot of Sherlock Holmesian elements to this to this film, and in this moment, not only is it a classic kind of Batman Gordon scene where he appears from darkness, and Gordon's like on his front porch after awaking from a nightmare. It just feels like it's classic Batman Gordon to the iota. And again, on the rewatch, you have this great thing to infer, like Batman, very Sherlock-y, is kind of going through his like, well, I fought the Ripper, and basically he like. Gordon deals in facts, not psychological theories, which were crazy back in the day. And Batman's a guy thinking like he's thinking of the new cutting edge idea of fingerprints, which are, oh sir, those will never be admitted into evidence. I just kind of the silliness there, but basically kind of giving the you're basically outlining like all the stuff about the Ripper I deal in facts, and he says, "Did you get a look at his face?" That's Gordon pulling like, "Hey, did you see my face? Is that why you're here?" Not in so many words, and again, like keeping Barbara not in the kitchen, like Jim, your eggs are done. The whole thing. It feels like a classic Batman Year One type scene for these two characters, and again, there's a respect there, and there's also speaks to respect between Batman and the Ripper. That the Ripper does view Batman as someone. As someone doing his mission to a half measure of his mission. Because Gordon does intend to kill the other guys too, but he's just focusing on the women because he thinks they're the worst based on his wartime experiences. So again, there's a lot of great underlying layers to a classic scene that I usually love, and it's great. As I mentioned earlier, the whole this is my home away from corruption. Then of course he turns Bat-X. It's a perfect scene that reads very interesting as an Elseworld version of that scene on a rewatch. So I really love that scene. Let's see. There's a great scene of deduction. Let's just call it the deduction seduction scene at the Gotham's Men Club between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. It's a great chemistry between Bruce and Selina, but it's really good to see how smart these two characters are. How very much she is the Irene Adler to a Sherlock Holmes.
Just really quick, I like the line that Bruce gives Selina about like, oh, I don't think your doorman was convinced I was actually a man. Well, I think if my doorman thought you were a man, then I'd have to fire him because he'd be blind. It's such a slick line right there.
It is. And again, like I think there's such a good written voice and a good good performed voice of Bruce Wayne in this film. And I love, these debonair, and again, I buy the charm, I buy the relationship, and I buy, like, she has this great bit, Jennifer Garner, when she says, I don't believe you'd do that. I don't believe you'd fire that doorman because you're too kind for that. And again, calling him out the Harvey Dent of it all and just saying, Gotham's native son, you're an orphan. That's how we know each other. Again, they're playing off each other so wonderfully. And, the little deduction parlor trick that Sherlock Holmes always pulled. It's wonderful. A line I have to address, my favorite line in the movie, real quick, because it connects to my last moment here, based on the big showdown, the big end moment of the showdown on the Ferris wheel. Gordon has a perfect line that takes everything I know and love about Batman and Jim Gordon, and they turn it on its ear with a line that is fascinating to me, where Gordon says, again, speaking of the World's Fair, we had the signal that, of course, Selina fashions into a rudimentary bat signal, and what the signal light does, and the line is, "What does in shining your signal in the sky, Bruce Wayne? What is it? What does a light in darkness do? It draws flies and vile. It draws flies and vermin." I thought that was, again, if Batman represents like a light in Gotham's darkness, again, this is the perfect inverse of what that represents, and as spoken by Gordon here, of like, it attracts the worst of people to that light, instead of shining a light for all of Gotham to kind of heal itself. I thought it was a fascinating line. Anyway, real quick, the last moment for me is the Houdini defeat. I love the Houdini defeat, and again, I love how, again, I know it makes no, I know it's anachronistic, but I don't care. It's
care.
I don't care. We don't. It's so great. This is, and again, the book was filled with these sort of moments, and this one's just perfect because I love also that $300 goes a long way back in it goes a real long way back in the 1800s. That again, another symbol of Gordon and Batman. Gordon being the lawman, he's armed with handcuffs, and he cuffs Batman to himself, just showing they're very much yin yang in this movie to a degree. And they're punching each other, and it's like, how is Batman going to get out of this? They're on a Ferris wheel that is on fire, and they're cuffed to each other. And Batman, well, he's learned from escape artists. We know this. He's gone around, and he cuffs Gordon to the railing. He says, "I paid Houdini $300 for that trick." Oh my God, it's great, followed by the really haunting and horrific death. One of the most horrific deaths I've seen in a while.
Yeah, they killed off Jim Gordon in this story, Dragon. They had the cojones.
And my God, like, not only do they kill him off in the most Jack the Ripper style ever. Like, honestly, if you're going to kill off Jack the Ripper, this is the way to do it, where he walks backwards into Mike Mignola looking fire, where, he walks backwards, not accepting defeat. Well, accepting defeat in a really psychotic way. He walks backwards, trailing the handcuff with him. Is lit on fire, is screaming, but in his last moments, laughing maniacally, and he disappears. Like, oh my God, it's terrifying. Okay. Those are my moments.
All right. So, Dragon, we were going to talk about the Elseworld stuff. I feel like we already kind of hit a lot of that. So, is there a way we can just kind of streamline that whole thing?
I guess we could blend it in the final thoughts. Like, anything, can you want to weigh in on like Elseworld along with your final thoughts? Can you do that?
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, we can do that. You did mention something about the Elseworlds that I kind of want to hit on again, which is kind of the do anything quality of it, which I really love. Sort of like, hey, what if Batman was Sherlock Holmes and he was going after Jack the Ripper? The what if thing, Dragon. This is kind of bleeding into my final thoughts here. I really like the what if of this story. I don't think this is a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. I honestly, Dragon, out of the stuff that we've gotten recently from DC in terms of the animation, it's below a lot of stuff. It's below the Cape Crusaders movies. It's below Batman, Scooby-Doo.
That's kind of separate if we're lumping it all in there.
What?
Well, you're saying in total or just with the DC original line?
I'm just saying, like, just in general with all the DC animated movies.
Okay. But
I guess just, that just kind of speaks to the seal of quality that we've been getting recently outside of Batman and Harley Quinn. So it's definitely not my favorite by any stretch. I think that you kind of appreciate it a little bit more, but it took risks. And like we've been kind of talking blue in the face about, I especially like how it sort of, kind of took the moral code of the most morally upstanding character in all of comics and sort of turned it on its head. Like, hey, if this moral code really so good, look what can happen with this moral code. So it was fun. Dragon, like I said, I keep saying this. I would have liked to have seen more of the Robins. I think the Robins it almost feels like there's a missing set piece with the Robins in this movie. And I enjoyed myself. Decent voice acting throughout. Jennifer Carpenter kind of steals the thing performance-wise. I wish it looked a little bit better. I wish it looked more stylized. But I can't really complain. So it's a solid movie. It's just probably not something I'm going to be like remembering like very vividly by the end of the year.
All right. Okay. For me, I think it's freeing to take on a story without rules carved in granite. It allows to see themes, we hold true about characters, things we know inherently about these characters expanded or turned on their heads in a fundamental, like, we cut to like at the core of who these guys are. We just turn it completely on its head. Like, what if these guys went a little step further? What if they went in a different direction? It's and also with Gotham by Gaslight in itself, as we've seen in in Scott Snyder's Batman work, 19th century Gotham and in giving Gotham a history is a great idea that I'm never tired by. I'm always fascinated by giving these cities, these settings, great history. Most it's like Elseworlds are most. I feel with the DC original films kind of adapting these stories, it's like the Elseworlds are most welcome to being adapted because the stakes are lower. Because again, you got Gaslight again, as I mentioned, it's two stories that are just kind of blended together and expanded them with like all the stuff we know about Batman now applied to a story that again was great when it came out. But again, we've had strides in Batman. We kind of take that core story and kind of make it better and kind of improve upon the source material in places. And again, Gotham by Gaslight, as long as you get the tone right, which I think the movie did, you're going to be safe because that's what people really remember from the book. Again, that the strikingness of those images, the cleverness of that idea, and again, it's a mystery story, and if you can kind of turn that on its head a little, I think you're golden. I mean, look, I miss a few elements from the source material, but I'm not bothered by losing them. I like this. The Wayne murder, for example. Again, it's a cool sequence, but again, we've seen it 100 times. It doesn't kill me that we don't have it in there. I like this. I like this. I like this more, and I like this more in the source material. That's where I'm coming down on. Bear in mind, source material is fine. It's just I feel like the gutsy choice, like the whole Jim Gordon, Jack the Ripper reveal, I felt was really gutsy, really clever, and it had a lot of things that really worked for me in this. So I like it more in the source material, and I would definitely be open to a Joker sequel if they're intending on doing that, or they might just be saying, hey, what if
they have the Robins in it a lot more for the sequel because
that's what
set that up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We do Joker and you play on the Robin thing. We know Jason might be. Again, it's a Victorian era. Bad things happen to children in the Victorian era all the time. Right. So it's an adventure with a Sherlock Holmesian Batman with something to say about it. And again, it had those phantasm-esque moments. And at the end, I appreciated this. Again, I'm not over the moon. I'm on the moon. I'm saying I'm happy to live with this. And it's like this was a lot of fun. It's rewatchable for me. It doesn't knock the others off the pedestal, but it is the best. I feel it's the best DC original animated film since Gods and Monsters, which was a couple of years back. That was the last really good one.
In terms of original stuff, that's not really well, I guess this is adapted from something.
Yeah, this is adapted. I'm just saying, honestly, looking at all of them, honestly, Gods and Monsters was not including like Scooby Doo and Cape Crusaders, not including those. The last ones have been Batman, Harley Quinn, some of the in-continuity stuff, and the last.
I will say Gods of Monsters was a really good one. Like that definitely, like for me, that stands up there with the Cape Crusaders.
Yeah, that's 2015, if I'm remembering correctly, and that's that feels. That was a really good quality one. I feel this is like it's in the. I feel unanimously it was a good movie all around. Didn't have any bad press or anything like something like Killing Joke. Unanimously, it was like another unanimously. Solid. It was another solid one like Gods and Monsters. That was a welcome addition. I enjoyed it.
All right. So, Dragon, I'm a bit miffed at how to end this. So, do you have any ideas, like any clever way to go out?
I think so. Bruce, look around you. The world of tomorrow is burning.